my name is John and today I'll be going over different strategies that you can do leading up to the selective exam if you're still not ready for it. I'll be going over 3 different time periods, 6 to 12 months down the line, 3 months down the line, or if you only had 1 week down the line and you're still not feeling ready. Let's get into it. For context, I hope you're not in this situation where you find yourself 1 month down or just a couple months out and you're just feeling not ready. But just in case, I thought that this video would be a fantastic opportunity for me to go over different strategies that you can actually employ if you find yourself in these situations. I decided to go for the 6 to 12 months because that gives us a medium-term horizon for us to plan. If a student comes to me and I had to give them actionable advice, I'll also go over 3 months and then 1 week before the actual exam. Obviously, it doesn't give us time, but depending on the different time periods that you have left until the selective exam, the strategy and the actions you could do would differ quite greatly. Let's start with 6 to 12 months. So generally you will have a general idea of how you went and how much you need to actually prepare based on the OC exams. So if you completed the OC exams, the opportunity class exams, and you got your mark, if you made it into an OC class quite convincingly, you weren't reserve or you got a pretty good mark, then you would know that you'll probably have to just keep up what you're doing in terms of study and you can maintain that until the selective exam. In terms of difficulty level, I would still say the OC exam is still a little bit more difficult compared to the selective exam. However, with the recent changes happening with Cambridge Assessment, changing the entire exam, changing general ability so that it's more thinking skills, the English exam being a lot more heavily weighted and more difficult as well, I would take that into consideration as well. So if you didn't do well in the OC exam, put more emphasis in it, and you know you've got to study up more. If you're finding yourself making excuses for the OC exam and saying, oh, I answered it wrong here, or I only had a couple months here, if I do the selective it'll be fine, you're definitely not ready. That's a telltale sign that you're giving yourself excuses and you're not coming to terms with reality where you didn't perform to the standard that you needed and you're behind. So first things first, accept the truth in what is in front of you, and that is when you're able to overcome the challenges that are presented before you. If you have about 12 months until the actual selective exam, definitely try out the sample papers if you haven't done it already. Your first attempt will give you the best and most accurate representation on how you go. So if you get 3/4 of the test right, or even more than that, then you already know that you're at a pretty good level and you just need to keep that momentum up and just keep working on whatever you're doing right now because it's working. However, if the first attempt you get around 50 to 60%, that kind of gives you an idea that you're still not ready yet and a lot needs to be done to pull you up. A lot of parents are like, well, the first attempt they got 50 to 60%, but then I got them to do it over and over again and now it's 70 to 80% or even more. But then I'm like, you're doing the same exam 3 or 4 times or even more than that. Isn't it a no-brainer for you to get even more marks? It is. So it doesn't give you a clear representation, so therefore only base it on your first attempt. In the first attempt, it will give you a pretty good idea and you can adjust accordingly from there. I suggest in areas that you're already good at, spend about 40 minutes each day on those topics, and in the areas that you're weak against, spend an hour to an hour and a half each day on that. So in total, you'll spend 2 to 3 hours if you're pretty good, or a little bit more than that if you're failing or a little bit weak in certain areas. Obviously, the inverse applies where if you're falling behind in multiple subjects or across the board, you're going to have to do more work than someone who's actually more ahead of you. So if you're falling behind, instead of just doing 40 minutes a day, you might have to do a bit more than an hour a day. And the important thing here is to be consistent. Since you have the 6 to 12 months, you can leverage an effect called the snowball effect. Essentially what this means is a little bit of work and improvement every single day over time will keep growing so that a snowball first appears like this size, and then over time, as you keep building it and adding more snow to it, it becomes a gigantic snowball. And that's where you see huge effects and benefits occurring. But if you don't have 6 to 12 months, you can't really leverage the effects of it, so you're not going to get the most out of it. The important thing here as well is you don't want to skip days. In order to create tangible habits and the right mindset, you have to work on it consistently across every day. Don't really care if you're busy, don't care if you have an event. You want to work on it every single day, no matter what. You skip a day, that's fine. However, you're probably gonna have to make up with those days throughout the rest of the week. You can't just skip a day and just take that as an easy day off, because all the students, even if they're not falling behind, they're working consistently every single day to put in the work, and I would actually recommend you to do the same too. One of the ways that we teach the snowball effect, if we do have 6 to 12 months until the exam, or if you're not going for the selective exam and you just want to build up your foundations, is to leverage the snowball effect using the ability to just read a little bit every single day. So I get them to read, all my students, especially if they're weak on English, to read 15 to 20 minutes a day. And essentially that will actually mean you're reading a bit more than an hour a week, which doesn't sound like much, but across 3 months, that is a lot more significant. Or across 12 months, times that number by 4, and that adds up. So let's say, for instance, you only have 3 months left. I would still recommend looking at the sample papers to see your benchmark level. You always want to do that in order for you to see how much you need to improve. If you're struggling with the sample papers, focus on questions that are of that difficulty. If that's too easy, you can go to a higher level. But with 3 months left, you want to be a bit more mindful, a bit more tactical. You can't really focus on the areas that you're strong against and make that work for you, and you can't really propel that forward. You don't have the luxury of time to do that. Instead, focus only on your weak areas. So for the subjects and the papers that you're actually struggling against and you didn't do very well, only focus on those areas. If it's thinking skills, put extra time and focus only on thinking skills. If it's writing, put extra time and focus on that. But if you're kind of weak across the board, can't really help you in that regard. Just try to focus on certain areas within those subjects that you're weak against. So for math, if you're weak against fractions, but you're actually strong with, Roman numerals, for instance, then just spend more time on fractions. Don't even touch Roman numerals. That's just an example. Chances are they won't give you any Roman numeral questions, but you understand what I'm talking about. As you won't be able to leverage the snowball effect with 3 months, you want to make sure you spend more than 40 minutes per subject. So spend a bit over an hour every single day consistently up until the exam. Take a bit of time off when you can, but remember, it's only 3 months, and then you can have a long break. Relax then. If you don't have a tutor, definitely try to find a tutor that knows what they're talking about, has experience, who's taught other students to get into selectives before. And if you only have 3 months left, I would recommend always to get a one-on-one tutor. Group tutoring is fantastic long-term if you want lots and lots of material. However, if you want someone to focus on the weak areas, and if you only have 3 months left, you kind of want to only focus on the weak areas, then I would always recommend a one-on-one tutor. Lastly, in the unfortunate and grave situation where you only have a week left until the exam, there's not many options for you, to be honest. You're gonna have to do the sample paper to see your benchmark level. You won't be able to do any other papers across that. Do that sample paper, and you'll be wallowing in regret because you haven't prepared before, but kind of relax. You have to take that into consideration, the mindset, and just know that you're probably not gonna do well in the exam. You're going to struggle, so instead, embrace it. Just know that do your best in this exam. It's the highest chance for you to get into a selective school, but there's always chances for you to transfer into a selective school, even if you go to a non-selective school or a private school. Focus on the certain questions in the sample paper that you struggled in and make that your primary area. You won't be able to have the luxury to focus on other areas, so make that your #1 focus. In conclusion, I've covered the different strategies, the different actions you can create and do across the 3 different times periods. One is where you had 6 to 12 months, which is probably the most ideal situation. If you have more than that, fantastic. That kind of increases the odds. Second one is 3 months. That changes up a little bit where you can't do the snowball effect. And then a week into the exam where you kind of have to come to terms where you're probably not going to do well. You're probably going to have to try to transfer into a selective school if that is your #1 focus. I would also recommend checking out the CSS framework if you're applying for it. I think that will increase the odds of you making into a selective school dramatically, especially if you only have 3 months or even a week to the actual exam. Please don't apply for schools that are outside your child's level. It's a waste of time and it's a missed opportunity. I've seen parents time and time again, their students are quite gifted, but they just go to their local schools or they go for schools that are just way outside their level. Don't do that. The objective here is to try to get into a selective school because you can always transfer into a high selective school and it becomes a lot easier when you're already in the ecosystem. So hope that helps. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments below and check out bingsacademy.com for some extra information. Thank you guys, and I'll see you next time.